This is Eye on New York for Sunday, August 29th, 2010. Now, from the CBS Broadcast Center in New York City, here is Don DAHLER.
Good morning and welcome to Eye on New York. This morning we begin with an eye on health. According to the Center for Disease Control, more than 1.5 million Americans will experience some sort of traumatic brain injury during their lifetime, and 51,000 will die from their injuries. And in a recent study, concussions from popular contact sports like football were linked to brain diseases with symptoms that mimic ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. CBS 2's Mark Morgan visited a New Jersey high school to learn about a football program aimed at keeping athletes safe on the field.
National powerhouse St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City is not only concerned with winning games, but also protecting the safety of its players through the Impact program.
It's an online program that they actually sit down and take a test, and it gives us a baseline of their functions, and then if they do get involved in a concussion situation or a suspected concussion situation, they'll take the test again, and the differential will correlate to timeout.
Hansen said players are kept out of action at least 5 days following a concussion. Their test results and medical examinations then determine when it is safe for them to return to the field.
We spoke with several parents watching practice today here at St. Peter's, and while expressing concern over concussions, they were also very grateful for the Impact program and how it addresses that issue.
I would hope that it's going to be picked up, throughout the state, and it's made me much more comfortable as a parent sending my son out in a high-impact sport.
Another part of the program that emphasizes protection, specially designed helmets that are fully padded, triple layered, with a coating made of fiber approved by NASA.
I think it's a great thing that the coaches and everybody else thinks it's a big thing that we get these helmets and make sure our heads are protected.
I think that program, plus the education that they're using to educate parents, coaches, as well as the players, has to be replicated across the country.
With the fear of sports-related concussions taking center stage, St. Peter's approach just may become the template for athletic programs around the tri-state area. In Jersey City, New Jersey, Mark Morgan, CBS 2 News.
According to the Center for Injury Research and Policy, of all 9 high school contact sports, football, no surprise, leads with over 55,000 reported concussions. Michael Kaplen, who you just saw in our report, is the chair of the New York State Traumatic Brain Injury Services Council. He's here now to talk more about keeping our kids safe. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Don.
These are more than just a bump on the head. These are serious injuries. Show us what happens to the brain in these kinds of incidents.
Sure. Well, the first thing we have to understand is the skull itself. The skull, while we think is a very strong protective covering for the brain, really is very hazardous to the brain once we understand the inside of the skull itself. And when we look at the inside of the skull, we could see a lot of sharp ridges.
Let's tip it up a little bit more toward the camera. There you go.
Protrusions.
These things.
And you could run your hand there, and you feel how sharp it is.
Yeah.
So what happens is that when this very soft brain,
you can here, I'll take this.
Hold that, is resting within the skull itself, it moves forward and backward, and it moves to the side, and it brushes up against all these ridges.
So those ridges actually bruise the brain itself?
Yes, it destroys brain cells. It causes tearing of these brain cells. It causes microscopic bleeds within the brain, and that's how the brain gets injured and how these cells get destroyed.
And we're seeing an increase, as we said in the report, on injuries to children in school largely because of contact sports.
Yes.
Although I do know that even cheerleaders are seeing an increase in these kinds of injuries. A helmet doesn't always protect kids from injury.
It does not. It might protect you from a skull fracture, but it doesn't protect the brain itself from moving around and twisting within the skull and brushing up and getting bruised. And that's the problem that most people just don't understand.
So what can parents do, and coaches and players themselves? I know part of it is having the right equipment, but part of it also is being careful the way you play the games. You want to play full out, but you also have to be smart.
That's true. We can't prevent brain injuries from occurring in football. We can't prevent brain injuries occurring in other contact sports. Brain injuries are not unique to football. They happen in soccer. They happen in baseball. They happen in any sport where 2 children can collide and hit each other. It's important to understand, though, that you don't need to strike your head against an object in order to sustain a brain injury. You could get a brain injury just from a rapid movement of your head within the skull. You don't have to be knocked unconscious in order to have a brain injury. And certainly we can't rely on MRIs or CAT scans or skull x-rays to tell us whether or not we do have a brain injury.
So what do you do in that incident if there is something that happens during a game and you think your child might possibly have a brain injury? Take it seriously, right? Get them checked out.
Take it very seriously. And my slogan, and the slogan of many others, is when in doubt, keep them out. And by that I mean very simply, if your child has a concussion or might have had a concussion, do not allow that individual to return to play during that game or any subsequent game until they've been first medically cleared and then neuropsychologically cleared with cognitive testing.
Now, you had something that you were talking about in this thing about baseline testing. That's something that you do prior to engaging in sports so that you know when a child, if they have suffered a brain injury, they're okay again on the back end of this.
Yes. It's called cognitive testing, baseline testing, which is now done as part of all professional sports in football, baseball, and hockey, and is slowly becoming popular in amateur sports as well. The concept is we need to know how this child was before the start of the season, how their brain was functioning, their ability to concentrate, memorize things, and function. But we don't know then what happens to the brain after the concussion takes place and when they return to what we call baseline. So it's the last step in the process when the headaches are gone, when the nausea is gone, when the vomiting is gone, when they're not saying they're seeing stars or sensitivity to bright light or sounds anymore. Now, or ringing in their ears is another popular symptom following a concussion. We now have to see if the brain has returned functionally to what we call baseline.
And the only way you know that is you have a testing prior to the injury occurring.
Testing prior and then subsequent.
And then you compare those.
Yes.
Does insurance cover that kind of testing?
Unfortunately, insurance may cover testing that's done after the concussion, but insurance will not cover baseline testing. But we do know under the President's new health legislation that preventive care is something that's mandatory. And what we do need now is federal regulations that say baseline testing, pre-season testing for all these children is preventive care, and we should require mandatory coverage of this. It's not very expensive.
And it makes sense for the insurance companies, too, to do this. I mean, if anything that helps the patient and make sure that the recovery is there. Otherwise, you're looking at long-term disability if you don't take care of this.
Well, we do know the following. We do know that once a concussion takes place in a child, they're far more susceptible to further and repeat concussions. And what you want to make sure is that this child is not allowed to return to play until they're completely asymptomatic.
Okay.
And that will prevent a lifetime of problems for that child.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your insight, Michael Kaplen.
Thank you.